Some truths don't explode. They unravel, quietly, methodically, until you're standing in the ruins of a life you thought was real. I used to think betrayal came with sirens, with screaming and tears. But when I found out about Eric and Rachel, there was no drama. Just a quiet morning, a buzzing phone, and silence loud enough to crack something inside me forever. My name is Lena Brooks, 39 years old, a project manager, and until 3 weeks ago, what I thought was one half of a rock-solid 13-year marriage. My husband Eric and I moved to Maple Glen Estates 2 years ago, a quiet, upscale suburb outside Denver. It was the kind of neighborhood with winding roads, spacious yards, and smiling neighbors who offered polite waves while walking their dogs, but rarely dug deeper than surface pleasantries. Rachel and Brandon Lewis lived directly across the street. They looked like something out of a lifestyle magazine. She always turned out in flawless outfits, not a chestnut curl out of place. He, a polished investment broker with that smooth-talking charm that closed deals. They welcomed us with a craft beer basket and a handwritten note, which I later found out Rachel had ordered online and simply copied from Pinterest. That should have been my first clue. "You caught me at just the right time," I said to Eric that fateful Tuesday morning, my voice hollow as I stood in the doorway of our bedroom. The sheets were still rumpled from where I'd been sleeping alone. He froze, one hand still tugging on a sock like a deer caught in headlights. "What are you talking about?" he asked. But his eyes, those familiar green eyes I'd trusted for over a decade, wouldn't meet mine. In my hand, I held his phone. He'd left it charging on the kitchen counter while he showered, and when it buzzed repeatedly with incoming texts, I did something I had never done before. I looked, and what I found shattered the very foundation of everything I believed about my life. "You really should be more careful with your passcode," I said quietly, scrolling through months of exchanges between my husband and Rachel Lewis. Explicit texts, late-night rendezvous, shared jokes about sneaking around while Brandon was away on conferences, and I was buried in project deadlines. "Lena, I can explain," he started, but I cut him off. "Explain what, exactly?" I asked, my tone clipped. "How you've been screwing our neighbor for the past 8 months? How you told her we were falling apart while whispering 'I love you' to me every night?" "Please, Eric, explain away." The air in the room thickened, unbreathable. Just outside, through the half-open window, I could see Rachel trimming her rose bushes, completely unaware that the lie she'd cocooned herself in was unraveling fast. "It's not what you think," Eric said, reaching for that calming tone he used when trying to talk me down from frustration. I used to find it reassuring. Now it made my skin crawl. "Really?" "Because I think you've been screwing our neighbor whenever I'm not around," I spat. The words felt strange, too crude for my usual vocabulary, but somehow necessary. "I think you've been lying to my face for months while planning your little escapades with the woman who cheerfully waves to me every single morning." Something in me shifted that morning. The shock gave way to a disturbing but welcome calm. I felt like I was watching myself from outside my body, observing the scene unfold like a spectator. "I was going to end it," he said, his voice cracking. It didn't mean anything." I laughed then, a hard, cutting sound that surprised even me. "That's worse, Eric. That means you risked everything we built together for something that didn't even mean anything." He reached for me, but I stepped back. "Don't." I watched him falter, searching desperately for the right words to undo what couldn't be undone. There weren't any. "Does Brandon know?" I asked. Eric paled. "Of course not, Lena, please. Let's just talk about this. Just us. We can work through it." I stared at the stranger in front of me. The man who had held my hand through my grandfather's funeral. The man who once drove 10 hours straight when I was stranded during a snowstorm in Salt Lake. The man who, apparently, could cheat without guilt and carry on a lie for nearly a year without flinching. "You know what's fascinating?" I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "I kept thinking something was off these last few months. I actually started therapy because I thought it was me, that I was being paranoid, too needy." I swallowed hard. I blamed myself for the distance between us. Outside, Rachel finished tending her rose bushes and disappeared back into the house where my husband had clearly become a regular guest. "I'm going to work," I said flatly, "and when I get home, I expect you to be gone." Lena, this is my house too, he protested, finally finding a sliver of his old conviction. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You're right. It is, so I'll make this easy. You have two choices. Leave temporarily while we figure this out. Or I call Brandon Lewis right now and blow up your cozy little arrangement. The color drained from his face. You wouldn't. Try me, I said, shocked by the steel in my own voice. You've underestimated me for months. Don't make that mistake again. As I walked out of the room and headed to work like it was any other day, something crystallized inside me. The numbness didn't leave, but it reshaped into something else, something sharper. Beneath my calm exterior, my thoughts ran wild. Every glance from a coworker, every ping of a new email was a reminder of the parallel life my husband had led. The more I relived those moments, the more resolute I became. This wouldn't end with Eric just moving out. That would be far too convenient. No, this betrayal, this complete humiliation, deserved something sharper, something unforgettable. I wasn't just going to end my marriage, I was going to expose their affair in a way neither of them would ever erase. That day at work passed in a blur. I sat through project updates, responded to emails, even laughed politely at a coworker's story, while my mind played back every scene from the last 8 months with fresh clarity and fury. The night Eric said he had to stay late and came home smelling faintly of a perfume I didn't recognize. The weekend I flew to visit my sister, and he supposedly went on a golf retreat that resulted in no tan lines, no receipts, and no photos. The way Rachel occasionally slipped oddly specific remarks about things in my life, details only Eric would have shared. The signs had been there. They weren't subtle, they were neon. But I'd trusted him completely. I'd explained them all away. When I got home that evening, Eric was at the kitchen table, hands clasped like a man awaiting sentencing. I canceled my dinner meeting, he said, as if that counted for something. We need to talk about this. I set my purse down carefully. Is that what you told Rachel? That you needed to cancel your plans because your wife found out? He flinched. I haven't spoken to her. Liar, I said calmly, pulling out my phone. I'd installed a call monitoring app during my lunch break, something I never imagined myself doing, but desperate times and all that. You called her at 2:17 this afternoon. You talked for 6 minutes and 23 seconds. The shock on his face was nearly satisfying. How did you? Does it matter? I interrupted. What matters is that you're still lying, even now. I sat across from him, placing the phone between us like evidence in a trial. I have one question, and I want the truth. Why her, Eric? Why our neighbor? Eric's eyes dropped to the table. It wasn't planned. It just happened. Things don't just happen, Eric. You made choices, every single time. She was there, he said softly, when you were working late, when you were stressed about your project deadlines. She was just there. The casual cruelty in his voice struck me like a slap. I had been working late to help keep our lives stable, secure, to support us both. I had pushed myself because I thought we were building something together. So this is my fault? I asked, my voice low and dangerous. Because I had ambition? Because I wasn't available enough to entertain you? For a moment, his silence was more infuriating than anything he could have said. My mind flooded with memories, late-night coffee-fueled deadlines, skipped vacations so we could renovate the house, every compromise I had made for us. I felt like a fool. A wife who had given everything, while he looked for comfort 2 doors down. That's not what I meant, he said quickly, trying to backpedal. I'm trying to explain, not excuse. I stood abruptly. Pack your things. I don't care where you go, but you're not staying here tonight. Lena, please. 13 years. Don't throw that away, his voice cracked. I made a terrible mistake. I'll do anything to fix this. For a brief moment, I hesitated. 13 years was a long time. We'd built a home, made future plans. We'd discussed kids, though that had never happened. We had joint finances, shared friends, holidays spent with each other's families. Undoing that would be brutal. But then I remembered the messages I'd read, the casual tone, the jokes, the string of winking emojis Rachel had sent when Eric mentioned I was working late again. Did you know, I said slowly, that I turned down a promotion in Seattle last year? Because you said you couldn't bear to leave this house, this neighborhood. As the words came out, the truth dawned. Was that because of her? Did you sabotage my career so you could keep seeing your mistress across the street? His silence was answer enough. Get out, I whispered. When he didn't move, something in me snapped. Get out, I screamed, loud enough for the whole block to hear, including Rachel, if she was listening. Eric scrambled to his feet, backing away like I was someone unfamiliar. Maybe I was. I'll just grab a few things, he said quickly. We'll talk tomorrow, when we're both calmer. I watched him rush upstairs, and for the first time in days, a strange clarity settled over me. In 13 years of marriage, I had never raised my voice at him like that. I'd always been the level-headed one, the fixer, the forgiver. Not anymore. While Eric was upstairs gathering his things, I walked to the front window and looked across the street at the Lewis's house. Their lights were on. I saw silhouettes shifting behind the curtains. Was Rachel panicking right now? Had Eric warned her I knew? My phone buzzed. A message from my sister Ava. Everything okay? You seemed off during our call. Earlier, I hadn't told anyone yet. Saying it out loud would make it real in a way I wasn't ready for. But as I watched Eric descend the stairs with a hastily packed duffel bag, I knew I needed an ally. Eric's been cheating with our neighbor. Can you come over tomorrow? I texted. Ava's response came immediately. On my way now. Don't do anything I wouldn't do until I get there. That made me smile, if only for a second. The list of things Ava wouldn't do was incredibly short. I'll be at the Renaissance downtown, Eric said, standing awkwardly by the front door. Please. Call me tomorrow. We can work through this. I said nothing, just stood there and watched as he walked out of our home and drove away. Not to the Renaissance, I was certain. Probably straight into Rachel's waiting arms the second Brandon left for his trip tomorrow. The thought made my blood boil. That night, I barely slept. I lay staring at the ceiling, my mind relentlessly reviewing every lie, every betrayal, every moment I'd second-guessed myself. By morning, the sadness had frozen over into something harder, colder. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared at the ceiling until dawn, like it might offer answers. But there were none. Only the weight of realization pressing on my chest like an anchor. The woman I had been just days ago, the one who trusted, who gave benefit of the doubt, who believed in second chances, she no longer existed. I knew exactly what I had to do. And yet, a small part of me trembled. What if this was overkill? What if I was letting my rage script my next move instead of reason? I pressed my palms against the kitchen counter, trying to steady my breath. For a moment, the line between justice and retaliation blurred, and I hated that it did. But then I pictured them, laughing behind my back in my house. The hesitation faded. I wasn't reacting, I was reclaiming. When Ava arrived, her hug nearly shattered me. Tell me everything, she demanded. So I did. Every disturbing detail, every bitter realization, every piece of the plan forming steadily in my mind. You're sure about this? She asked once I was done. It's extreme. So is sleeping with the neighbor for almost a year, I replied evenly. They embarrassed me in my own home, in our own neighborhood. I'm just returning the favor. The words left my mouth without hesitation. There was no tremor, no guilt. I wasn't acting out of vengeance. I was reclaiming my dignity, my control, my voice. Ava studied me for a long moment, then gave a single nod. Okay then, let's get to work. What Eric never really understood about me, what he grossly underestimated, was my capacity for strategy. You don't become a project manager without knowing how to anticipate 10 steps ahead. First things first, I told Ava as we sat at my kitchen table that morning. I need to confirm Brandon's schedule. And how are you going to do that without tipping Rachel off? She asked. I gave a tight smile. Because Brandon and I have something in common. We both work too much. He posts his open houses on the neighborhood Facebook group every week. Sure enough, a quick scroll confirmed it. Brandon had 3 open houses lined up all day Saturday. Tomorrow. Perfect. Now we need to get Eric's things, I said. Ava raised an eyebrow. All of them? No. Just enough to make a statement. We spent the rest of the morning combing through his side of the closet. I chose his favorite suits, the engraved watch I gave him on our 10th anniversary, and those ridiculous monogrammed dress shirts his mother sent every Christmas. I added his shaving kit, prescription meds, and even the framed photo of us from his nightstand. What about this? Ava asked, holding up his passport. I hesitated, then nodded. Add it, he might need it, he'll be living somewhere else. By noon, we had filled 3 of our largest suitcases. I texted Eric, "I've packed some essentials for you. You can come get the rest later." His response came almost instantly. "Thank you. Can we talk today?" I didn't answer. Instead, I called my attorney, a fierce, no-nonsense woman who'd handled all my business contracts for years. She agreed to meet me that afternoon. "You're not wasting any time," Ava remarked as I grabbed my keys. "Why would I? They didn't ask me," I muttered. While Ava stayed behind at the house, I drove to meet with my lawyer, Regina, and laid it all out for her. Every detail. She took meticulous notes, her expression hardening the longer I spoke. "Do you have digital evidence?" she asked. "I've got screenshots of all the messages," I confirmed, "and the phone logs, dates, times, duration of calls between Eric and Rachel." Regina gave a curt nod of approval. "Good. What do you need from me today?" "A preliminary separation agreement. And I want our joint accounts frozen." She studied me carefully. "Are you sure you don't want to attempt counseling first? The courts tend to look more favorably." "I'm not interested in what looks favorable," I cut in. "I'm interested in what's fair." He betrayed me, in our house with our neighbor, for almost a year. He manipulated my career choices just to make his affair more convenient. Regina's stern face softened slightly. "I understand. I'll have the paperwork ready by tonight." When I got home, Ava was waiting for me, eyes gleaming with purpose. "I did some digging," she announced. "Rachel's a bit of a social media queen, apparently. Look." She pulled up an Instagram account, private, but Ava had found her way in through a mutual contact. Dozens of posts from the past year suddenly cast in a much darker light. Rachel at a chic restaurant Eric had claimed to hate. Rachel wearing a gold bracelet identical to the one Eric said he got for his mom last Christmas. Rachel on a solo weekend getaway to the coast, the same weekend Eric said he was attending a leadership retreat in Boulder. "She's been flaunting it," I said, my stomach churning, "right in everyone's faces." "Not just that," Ava added grimly. "I think they've been using your house." "What?" I froze. She held up a photo. Rachel, glass of wine in hand, and in the blurred background, barely visible but unmistakable to me, was the unique mosaic backsplash of my kitchen. The realization hit like ice water. I felt sick. Not just emotionally, but physically. A cold sweat spread down my spine as my legs went weak beneath me. I reached for the counter to steady myself. My home, my refuge, my space had been desecrated. Every memory inside those walls was now tainted by their arrogance. They hadn't just used my bed. They had stolen the safety and comfort that I had poured years into creating. They hadn't just betrayed me. They'd violated my space, my sanctuary, my home. A heavy, cold resolve settled in my chest. "Change of plans," I said quietly. "We're not just packing his things. We're delivering them. Tomorrow." That night, sleep was elusive again, but this time not from grief, from anticipation. Saturday morning dawned bright and crisp. I stood by my window, watching as Brandon Lewis left for his day of open houses, dressed in his tailored blazer and real estate smile. An hour later, Eric texted again. "Can we meet for coffee to talk? I'm busy today. I'll let you know when I'm ready to talk." I could practically feel his frustration buzzing through the phone. "Good. You sure about this?" Ava asked as we loaded the 3 suitcases into the back of my car. "Absolutely." What Eric didn't know was that while he was busy sneaking around with Rachel, I had made some connections of my own. Like Eleanor Winters, the retired schoolteacher who lived next door to the Lewises. During one of our morning walks, Eleanor had casually mentioned that Rachel seemed to receive frequent male guests when Brandon was out of town. "Such a shame," she'd said. "Brandon seems like such a nice man." At the time, I'd brushed it off. Now, I realized Eleanor had been warning me. That morning, I sent Eleanor a text. "Is Rachel home alone?" This morning, Eleanor responded almost immediately. "Yes, dear. Brandon left for his showings. She's been home all morning. Everything okay?" she added. "Everything's perfect. Would you mind texting me if she leaves?" Of course. Ava and I waited until the afternoon. No message from Eleanor meant Rachel was still home. Still nesting. No more texts from Eric either. He'd probably given up for the day. "Ready?" Ava asked as we pulled up across the street from the Lewis's house. I inhaled deeply. "Ready." We popped the trunk and rolled the 3 large suitcases across the quiet suburban street, the wheels clicking lightly on the pavement. My heart pounded so loud it echoed in my ears, but my hands stayed steady as I rang the doorbell. The wait felt eternal. Then the door opened. Rachel Lewis stood there, her flawless expression faltering as she took in the scene, me, Ava, and 3 large suitcases on her front porch. "Lena," she said, clearly baffled. Is everything okay?" I gave her the kind of smile that doesn't touch the eyes. "Everything's wonderful, Rachel. I brought Eric's things. Since he's been spending so much time here, I figured he might need them." The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might collapse. Her mouth opened and closed without sound, her hand bracing against the doorframe like it was the only thing holding her up. I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered. I tilted my head. "Really? Because according to the texts on his phone, you two have been getting very close for months now." I nudged the biggest suitcase forward with my foot. "His clothes, his toiletries, and this one," I tapped the mid-sized one, "has the monogrammed shirts you loved. You know, the ones his mother sends every Christmas." Her eyes widened at that detail. "Confirmation." "Lena, please," she whispered, glancing frantically over her shoulder into the house. This isn't what you think." "Oh, and what do I think, Rachel?" I said, my voice tightening. "That you've been sleeping with my husband in my bed while I was out working? That you've been waving at me from across the street while laughing behind my back at our block parties? What's going on here?" A deep voice cut through the moment. Brandon Lewis stood behind his wife, scanning the scene, me, Ava, the bags, and his wife's panicked expression. He was supposed to be at his open houses. My carefully constructed plan began to collapse in real time. Rachel went from pale to green. "Brandon, you're home early," she said shakily. "Showing got canceled. The sellers had a family emergency." His eyes darted to the luggage, then to me. "What's this about?" For a heartbeat, I hesitated. This wasn't how I had planned it. Rachel was supposed to be alone. She was supposed to face her guilt without witnesses. But then I looked at Brandon's face. Confused, uncertain, the same stunned look I'd worn when I discovered the truth. It steeled me. "Your wife," I said evenly, "has been having an affair with my husband for the past 8 months. I found out Thursday. I'm dropping off his things since he seems to be spending so much of his time here, especially when you're working." Silence. A long, brutal silence. Brandon's expression shifted. Confusion, then disbelief, then something darker as the weight of my words landed. That's ridiculous." Rachel sputtered. "Brandon, she's clearly having a breakdown or something." "Is she?" Brandon cut in, his voice low and cold. Then he turned to me. "Do you have proof of this?" I pulled out my phone, opened the screenshots, and handed it to him without saying a word. Rachel lunged forward, but Ava stepped smoothly between them. "Don't," my sister warned, her voice calm but firm. Brandon began scrolling. With every swipe his face hardened. Explicit texts, weekend plans, little private jokes at our expense. When he looked up, his eyes had gone cold. "How long?" he asked Rachel, his voice like a blade. "Brandon, please, I can explain." "How long?" he roared, making all of us flinch. Rachel burst into tears, her mascara streaking down her face. It just happened. It didn't mean anything." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "That's exactly what Eric said." As if summoned by the sound of his name, a car screeched to a stop at the curb. Eric jumped out, panic painted all over his face as he took in the scene on the Lewis's doorstep. "Lena, what are you doing?" he called, rushing over. Brandon handed me my phone and turned to face my husband. "I think your wife is dropping off your belongings at your new residence," he said, voice eerily calm. "Since you've been so comfortable in mine." Eric stopped dead, eyes bouncing between Brandon, Rachel, and me. "Brandon, listen. This isn't." "If you say this isn't what it looks like," Brandon interrupted, "I swear to God I might actually punch you, because it looks exactly like you've been screwing my wife, behind my back, behind Lena's back." He gestured toward the suitcases. "Take your shit and get off my property." Eric's face crumpled. "Rachel, tell him, please." "Tell him what?" I snapped, my voice finding strength again. "Tell him about the weekend getaways? About the time you spent in our bed when I was out of town? About how you told her our marriage was crumbling while telling me everything was fine?" My voice cracked slightly, but I didn't stop. A small crowd had gathered on the sidewalk. Neighbors pretending to water plants, walk dogs, or check mail, watching every second unfold. Among them was Eleanor Winters. She caught my eye and gave me a small, sad nod. "Everyone's watching," Rachel hissed, tugging at Brandon's arm. Please, let's talk inside. We need to deal with this privately. No, Brandon said, shaking off her touch. I'm done with privacy. I'm done with secrets. Then he turned to me. Did you know before Thursday? I shook my head. I had no idea. I found their messages on his phone. Brandon gave a solemn nod. A look passed between us. Mutual recognition of betrayal. Two unwilling members of a club neither of us asked to join. I turned to Eric. My voice was calm, controlled. I've frozen our accounts. I filed separation paperwork yesterday. My attorney will reach out Monday. I gestured to the suitcases. You should take these. I assume you'll need a place to sleep now that both your beds are off limits. Eric stared at me like I was someone he didn't recognize. Maybe I was. Maybe he'd never really known me. You can't do this, he said weakly. I already have. Brandon stepped forward, grabbed the largest suitcase, and shoved it hard into Eric's chest. Take your things, and get out. Now the neighborhood watched in stunned silence as Eric loaded the suitcases into his trunk. Rachel had disappeared back into the house, her sobs audible even from the sidewalk. Eric didn't look at anyone as he drove away. Brandon turned to me. I'm sorry, he said simply. Me too. Coffee sometime? He asked, catching me off guard. I think we might have a lot to talk about. Despite everything, I found myself nodding. I'd like that. As Ava and I walked back toward my car, the crushing weight that had been pressing against my chest since Thursday began to lift. Not completely, the pain would linger, but it had morphed into something manageable, something I could carry. You okay? Ava asked, gently squeezing my hand. I looked back at the Lewis's house, where Brandon stood alone on the porch, looking just as lost as I had felt days earlier. No, I answered honestly, but I think I will be. 6 months passed. The seasons changed. The wounds began to scar over. The divorce was finalized quicker than I had anticipated. Eric didn't fight it. He couldn't, not with the evidence so overwhelmingly stacked against him. I kept the house. He kept his shame. Rachel and Brandon listed their home 3 weeks after the confrontation. I heard they separated soon after. Rachel moved back to Michigan to live with her parents. Brandon stayed in town. The neighborhood gossip moved on to fresher scandals, though Eleanor Winters still stops by with cookies sometimes, telling me she's proud of my moxie. Eric reached out several times during those first months, texts of regret, long emails about self-reflection and therapy. Once, he sent flowers to my office with a note asking if we could have coffee just to talk. I donated the bouquet to a nearby senior center and never responded. Some wounds don't need closure. Some betrayals don't deserve forgiveness. What surprised me most was my unexpected friendship with Brandon. That casual offer for coffee turned into weekly walks around the neighborhood, then occasional dinners. Two broken people, finding comfort in the only other person who knew exactly what that specific kind of betrayal felt like. Do you think they were worth it? Brandon asked one evening as we sat on my back porch, watching fireflies flicker in the summer dusk. To each other, I mean. Was the affair worth losing all of this? I thought for a moment before answering. I don't think it was ever about being worth it. It was about selfishness, about convenience and opportunity. He nodded slowly. I keep wondering, he said, if I missed something, some sign, if I should have known. Me too, I admitted. But I've realized something. What they did wasn't a reflection of what we lacked. It was a reflection of what they lacked. Integrity. Courage. Honor. Brandon's hand found mine in the deepening dusk. Not a romantic gesture, just solidarity. Understanding. We were still healing, still rebuilding. I'm selling property in Colorado next month, he said after a pause. A week-long trip. Mountains, clean air. You should come. I turned to him, surprised. As your friend, he added quickly. Separate rooms. I just think we both could use a little perspective. Some space from this place and its memories. I gave his hand a gentle squeeze. I'd like that. Later that night, after Brandon had gone home, I stood in my bedroom. I stood in the room I once shared with Eric and realized something unexpected. I'd gone an entire day without thinking of my ex-husband. No sudden pangs of betrayal, no replays of our worst moments, no second-guessing what I could have done differently. Progress comes in small moments. Healing happens in the quiet spaces between heartbeats. I picked up my phone and texted Ava. I think I'm going to Colorado next month. Her response was instant. With neighbor guy? Yes. as friends, for now." I smiled at her teasing reply, then walked over to the window that faced what used to be the Lewis's house. A young couple had moved in last month, a pair of newlyweds with a toddler and another baby on the way. I welcomed them with wine and store-bought cookies, making no pretense about baking them myself. The truth, I've learned, is always simpler than lies. I don't know what the future holds, with Brandon, with my career, or even with this house, which carries both beautiful and painful memories. But I know this: I survived the worst betrayal I could imagine. And I came out stronger. Not untouched, but unbroken. Sometimes when life hands you heartbreak, you don't just survive it, you use it to rebuild something new, something honest, something real. And sometimes the greatest revenge isn't the dramatic confrontation. It's the quiet, steady dignity of reclaiming your life, without the ones who tried to destroy it. I closed the curtains on my old view and turned toward whatever comes next. Dear friend, life will never promise fairness, only truth. And sometimes that truth arrives like a storm, tearing through everything you thought was secure. But as the Stoics remind us, we cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them. Lena didn't choose betrayal, but she chose dignity. She chose to act, not just react, and in doing so she reclaimed not just her peace, but her power. If you're standing in the aftermath of your own storm, remember this: you are not broken, you are becoming. Rebuilding isn't weakness, it's wisdom earned the hard way. Stay strong, stay true, and always stay moving forward. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe for more stories that speak to the quiet strength inside us all. Thanks for being here.